Welcome to another edition of We Need to Talk About Movies, brought to you by banterflix.com. And now, here's your host, Jim McLean.
Hello. Yes, I am indeed your host, Jim McLean, the editor-in-chief of the Banterflix Movie Review website. Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, We Need to Talk About Movies. This is the last episode in the current season. This is season 10. So whilst we might be in a rush to get to 2021, I thought we'd take stock and reflect on some of the highlights from the past 12 months, some of the interviews we've been able to do, mostly via Zoom because of the weird COVID world that we live in. But it has given us an opportunity to speak to people we might not normally have been able to talk to. So on this best of, it's a bumper edition because we're not going to be back until probably mid-January, early February with a new season of We Need to Talk About Movies. But on this bumper edition of the podcast, you're going to hear my interview with Kelley and Alex Thompson about their film St. Francis, which I absolutely loved. It's one of my films of the year. You'll also hear me talking to the Pierce brothers about their horror film The Wretched, which was a huge success at the American box office just at the outset of the COVID pandemic. And you'll also hear my chat with director MJ Bassett about her film Rogue, actress Tara Lee, who features in The Racer, and my chat with producers April Kelley and Sara Huxley about their film Rose, A Love Story, which will be released in 2021. So, Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for subscribing. If this is your first time checking into We Need to Talk About Movies, this gives you a great taster session of what we're all about. So hopefully you enjoy. And with that, let's get on with the podcast.
So, what's your favorite color? Hey, slow down.
How old are you?
How old do you think I am?
52.
Why do you think that?
Because that's how Linda was. And she was as full as you.
I'm 34.
Do you have kids?
No?
Or are you married?
No.
Do you have a boyfriend?
No?
A girlfriend?
No. Do you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend?
No.
Then we have something in common.
I'm tired.
We just started walking.
Will you carry me?
Let's go back and get the stroller.
No. We're almost there. It won't take long if you carry me.
The park is really close.
So that's a clip of St. Francis, and I'm joined now by the film's director, Alex Thompson, and its leading lady and writer, Kelley O'Sullivan. Kelley, I'll start with you. Tell our listeners as much as they need to know about the film.
I would just say it's about a woman who's in her mid-30s who gets a job as a nanny. At the same time, she decides to get an abortion. And the entire movie is about the relationship between this nanny and her sort of obstinate charge, this girl, Frances, who's absolutely amazing. Yeah, I think that's what it's about. That's kind of our log line.
Yeah. I don't know if it's physically possible as a man, but Frances, I think is it Ramona Edith Williams is the young actress? I don't know if it's physically possible, but she did make my ovaries tingle when I was watching this film.
Can I just understand that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of, that's all I can say about that. And, for you, Alex, what was the challenge of casting a young actress for that role? And I suppose the kind of key thing, how much of that is Ramona and how much of that is what was written for the film screenplay?
It's kind of remarkable. She was the youngest person we saw. So we only saw about 35 girls, and she was the youngest. So our producers were not keen on the idea of us. She was 5 years old when we saw her. And so she was 6 when we shot. And she was word perfect. So everything she says is Kelley's script. So, but everything that she sort of is Ramona. So she really walked on set with this sort of sense of herself that she never let go of. She never seemed like she was performing or playing a part exactly. So it was like a perfect marriage of the two.
And then when you're on set, having been to a few sets myself, like it's a stop-start process. Making a film is not always smooth. How then, when you have such a young actress, how do you keep her entertained? How do you keep her kind of on point during the filming process?
Kelley, I always felt sort of bad because Kelley kind of fell into this babysitter role, this nanny role.
I became a nanny again.
Yeah.
I used all of my nanny skill set. And
were you possibly method acting, kind of taking it to the kind of role, kind of going full Daniel Day-Lewis? Yeah,
I guess so. I didn't intend to, but I pulled a Daniel Day.
Yeah. We let Ramona run wild the first week, and her parents actually pulled us aside, and they were like, "Could you please? We don't let her do this at home." She was running into camera people. I mean, it was fun, but not sustainable.
Yeah. It's like we're talking there about Frances. What about Bridget? Tell us a little bit about this character, and tell us kind of, as the film's writer as well, can you tell us a wee bit about the genesis of the project and how it kind of snowballed into the final feature?
Yeah, I mean, the genesis is two very real things that happened in my life, which was I was actually a nanny when I was in my 20s. And then when I was in my early 30s, I did actually get an abortion. And so when I was thinking about writing a film, I thought those two experiences could be really interesting if they were juxtaposed in the same summer. And if that was just a starting off point, that then there's a whole other plot that doesn't just surround this abortion, but that it surrounds the evolution of their friendship and Bridget's sort of immersion into Frances's family and the way that all of their lives kind of ping pong off of each other for that summer. Yeah, so that was the genesis of the story for me. And then I just have like a big old soft spot in my heart for Bridget, or for anybody, any woman who's in their mid 30s and feels like they don't have it figured out, because I think there's this incredible pressure for everybody, but I think for women in a special way, to kind of have your career, your relationship, having children, that you should be on that path if you haven't already made those choices.
Watching the film this morning before the interview, I was kind of thinking the closest maybe kind of thing I've seen to films like this is stuff like The Kids Are Alright, and even like something like Obvious Child as well, which is a film I absolutely adore. How big a part of this for both of you guys was it to give that sense of representation, to see, because that's what viewers want. We want to see ourselves reflected back on the big screen. We want to see ourselves because, and I hate this term, there's two terms I'm going to use in this interview I hate. There's dramedy, right? And then another term I've heard in a few interviews or a few reviews of this is talking about the female experience. I do hate that buzzword, but they are important things. Because there's a big thing of this. We have particularly three women in this film who, in a certain regard, they feel slightly ashamed. They feel like they're failing in different ways. There's, a lot of big themes thrown into the mix here, but they're not. They've nothing to be ashamed about whatsoever. A big part of it is just being able to talk. And I think it's Bridget's mother says the thing, we need to talk about these things more, to that sense of normalizing. So there must be that sense with this feature of we are creating a platform to discuss these matters and a platform to showcase these things, that, it's okay to talk about this stuff.
Absolutely. And it's the fastest way out of feeling lonely and isolated is to say, I went through this thing. And then so many people will say, oh my God, me too. Mm-hmm. But it takes the first person kind of opening up and sharing that experience to get the dialogue started. And it was incredibly important for me to portray the complex experiences that you don't see when you just look at somebody's house, or you get to know somebody on the street. And Bridget gets to see everybody's mess just by nature of being in the house, and they get to see hers too.
Yeah. And, I think Kelley always talks about how life is dramatic. Life is funny. Life has all those sort of things in it at once. So the effort with the film and making it was just to try to strive for authenticity and naturalism, and that the laughs and the tears would come out of that naturally. So we tried that it didn't feel forced as much as possible.
Yeah, because I mentioned the term dramedy. It's a term I absolutely hate. But how much of a useful tool, though, is comedy in being a diffusing factor in being able to cut into some pretty important issues? We've mentioned a few of them there in terms of particularly abortion. It is something I want to come back to. But we have postnatal depression as well, and menstruation. Shock horror, women menstruate. It is a thing I'm aware of. My wife and I talk about this on a monthly basis. But comedy is such a diffusing factor to be able to create a platform for discussing these things. Was that something that was of particular interest to you?
Oh yeah, if you can make somebody laugh, you have their heart. It just opens them up and it keeps people engaged in a way that I know I grow tired if it's a 2-hour drama. By the end, I'm like, oh, wow, I feel like I've just been punished. But if you can keep people laughing, they'll want to stay with you the entire time, especially if it's laughter of recognition, which I think we were trying to go for here. It wasn't, we weren't interested in writing jokes, in having like, a cliche sitcom kind of movie, but we wanted something where the laughs come out of, oh, right, I've been through that. And so I'm laughing as a way of connecting.
Obvious question in the room, Alex, like as the man kind of involved in this project, for you, does working on this project with your partner in the same sense, but does that create a sense that you can talk about these things more and be more confident and upfront about talking about these things?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were just talking about this yesterday, that I think the difference between putting your foot in your mouth is just being informed. If you can talk about something in a way that doesn't come from assumptions or bias or a movie you saw 10 years ago, that it's actually about specificity and, I don't know, curiosity. I mean, that's just what a director does. So, you're curious. That's the only way to really do the job. So it was scary at first, honestly. Like at the very beginning, I was nervous I wasn't the right person for it, just by virtue of who I am. But it slowly became clear that, I didn't set out to sort of find my take on this story. The script spoke for itself. And it's been really fun following the film around and seeing the way that it sparks conversation and dialogue, just like it preaches.
There's one thing in particular from watching the film today I did want to talk about, and it is, a big part of the film. And there's a key thing, actually. I think, Kelley, you said this in an interview I was watching. There is an abortion in this film, but it is not the event. It's an event within the film. But can I just talk to you both about the challenges of filming that sequence and kind of how that evolved from what you had maybe originally written, and then Alex, you coming in as the director, and I suppose the third player in this is your DOP as well, Nate. From what you had originally written to then what we see on the screen, what was the biggest challenges for that?
Well, originally it was like a montage only. After she takes the pills, it was a yoga position. It was like
that he like gives her
a back massage
while she's in child's pose or something.
And then there's a shot of them reading.
And then he like is making her food.
And then he makes her food. And Max Lipschitz is an improviser. And so, and I had thought we had this great printout of all the symptoms, that basically the piece of paper you get when you got the pills. And while we were shooting, I thought, well, I don't know if the audience is going to understand all this blood that's about to happen. What if we have him read this and Kelley and Max can just kind of groove with it and improvise? And Harry Potter came in, and it just became this like really fun, joyful thing. And Nate was just game. I mean, Nate was our operator as well, so he was just sweating, and you could see his movement in the film too.
Yeah, the intention was always to have that sequence not be scary.
Yeah.
Because I think, I didn't know anything about what it was going to be like to have an abortion until I had one. And there are things that are certainly anxiety inducing, but I was like, for people who watch this movie, who will maybe get an abortion one day, I want to show a version of that can be equally true to the scary version, which is you can have a supportive partner who like helps you get through these physical things and these emotional things. And so we wanted intentionally to have it be sweet. And it's crazy to say that, but like a sweet abortion montage is something I'm really proud of.
I totally agree. And I suppose bringing it back, to your own personal experience, kind of for you, I mean, what were the experiences of what you would have seen on the big screen, that when you think of kind of abortions, when you were going through that process of what you had maybe seen on screen? Because only one that really comes to mind for me off the top of my head is this is only a lightning bulb moment, is kind of stuff like Dirty Dancing, where it's kind of apart. I mean, stuff like that where it's a very traumatic part of the film. It's very much an event within the film. But was that something? I guess I know the answer here already before I've even asked it. But that must be something that you must as you've alluded to there, in the back of your head, you
Yeah.
wish there was something there when you were younger going through that to have seen on screen, rather than where the abortion is the big event, the will they, won't they kind of stuff.
Well, and in so many TV shows and movies, the woman changes her mind. The possibility of an abortion is brought up. She is about to get one, and then something happens, and she'll change her mind. And so I think the messaging of that is that in order to be like a good protagonist, you should change your mind. You should go through with this pregnancy, even if you don't necessarily want to. And while I think probably there are plenty of people who have changed their minds and have had babies and loved them, I think there are also many women who have gotten abortions and don't regret it. And so it was really important for me to show that as well, that it doesn't have to be this like scary health crisis like in Dirty Dancing, and that it doesn't have to be this, you don't have to wring your hands about it if you know what you want to do. There are many different experiences that women go through, and this was showing one version.
Yeah. I know we are nearly out of time, but a big part for this film, it's earned its reputation on the festival circuit. I think of South by Southwest, and I know that's 2019 festival circuit. 2020 is a very different kind of scene. For you guys who are working in the industry, what's your kind of thoughts right now? I always hate at the minute bringing up COVID. We've tried to make Banterflix as COVID a free zone as we possibly can. But for you guys that are working in the industry right now, particularly I suppose from just a filming point of view, but also the festival circuit as well, your thoughts on how that's going to change and the logistics that lie ahead and the challenges that lie ahead for 2020, 2021 for the independent film scene?
I think everybody's thinking small. We're both trying to think small, which is useful because St. Francis was small. So when like Kelley's script, it could be big. It could be this like sort of Lady Bird, big Hollywood multi-million-dollar dramedy. And it could be, and it might end up being that. But it could also be, under $1 million and done with sort of a small scattered crew. And there's a lot of outdoor work. It's weird the things you start thinking about with COVID. You're like, oh yeah, we need more outdoor scenes. Mm-hmm. But festivals are just a big question mark for me. It's like, do I even want to go in a movie theater? I'm so excited that the film is opening in the UK in July. I mean, I'm so excited that the opportunity will be there. But at the same time, I'm like, if I was there, would I go? And I'm just nerd. I want everyone to be safe. That's all.
Is this the point where you have to go say, yes, of course I would be there? Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I was just thinking we're trying to get people to go see this.
Well, really, one of the big things we were thinking about was this, the theatrical wasn't guaranteed. And so now knowing that we've got it, I wish we could be there with you right now.
Yeah.
That's the big regret.
But then just from a point of view, the simultaneous release as well. I think the film will potentially be simultaneously released. I mean, that must be a big kind of key thing as well. I know in COVID times and even non-COVID times, that's a big thing for the independent film scene, because multiplexes, like here we are in Belfast, where multiplexes, we'll have no problem when it's released seeing stuff like Tenet. That'll not be a problem. Not a problem seeing Black Widow, but we have one independent cinema here in Belfast where a film like St. Francis might find it home. So then for you guys, this is such a big thing at the minute, simultaneous release, premium rentals, all that kind of stuff. This is all being tested in these current uncertain times. How big a thing is that then for you to be able to know that your film, it's out there? People can access it. If they can't physically get to the cinema, they're able to kind of get it through digital download, legal digital download legal digital download methods.
It's huge.
It's amazing.
It's opened up a world of possibilities, and even for people who in normal times couldn't make it to the theater, they can see our movie. Like, you don't necessarily, you can put the kids to bed and then you can hit play and you can watch our film in a way that you can't necessarily do if the only option was to go to a movie theater. So I've already had people reach out to me from like elementary school who rented the film online and watched it. And I'm so grateful that that's an option. And I do think that's going to be a huge part of how people see movies for a while.
Yeah. There's a benefit to the idea of a movie being this big event, but then there's also something fun about getting to be a part of someone's day-to-day life. A part of somebody's, after work, turning on the television and watching something that makes them feel good. So I think that's kind of fun. That's kind of exciting. Getting to be inside people's homes.
And my last question, I know we're, as we said before I started to record, the not quite lockdown, but what are you guys working on next? How are you using this time of the COVID to kind of work on your next projects, tighten everything up from a screenwriting point of view? What will we see you guys working on next?
Kelley's got a wonderful script that she's working on that we're going to be sending out to co-direct, which is exciting. I wrote a sort of Hitchcock horror film set in a hospital, and then a few other things. But we're really just trying to find the people who are also in lockdown, not quite lockdown, and see if they want to watch our movie and hang out on Zoom for a little bit, and kind of those relationships that you would have had on the festival circuit. We're trying to meet those folks and get to talk to as many people as possible.
Because I think the film's doing Edinburgh Film Festival. It's a film festival I go to quite a lot. I think they've kind of went down that route as well, kind of, because I think the film's available digitally through them. I think it's through Criterion. Yeah. So I'm assuming then if this hadn't been a COVID situation, you guys would have been potentially in Edinburgh?
We would 100%.
I know. Every day I'm like, I wish we could go.
Yeah.
But we'll just have to make another movie that gets in that festival in the future date and then go then.
My sister studied in Edinburgh, so we love Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It is a city I love, and it's a festival I attend regularly. So hopefully you have to keep to your promise. We will see you guys working on another project in Edinburgh, and the next time we meet, you'll remember the guy with the Game Boy
and the screen map.
Yes, that's all we need. So hopefully one day we'll be able to meet physically. So thank you very much, guys, and look forward to what we see in the future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for the conversation. We really appreciate it.
Dylan! Dylan, I'm down here, baby. Mommy needs help. Come here, sweetheart. Come on, it's okay. Dylan, I'm down here, baby. Dylan! You're going to be in so much trouble if you don't come here right now. Listen to Mommy, you little shit! Do as I say, Dylan! Dylan! Hey, don't dip out on me like that. It freaks me out. Come on. I think I found a path back.
So that's a clip of The Wretched, and I'm joined now by the film's writers and directors, Brett and Drew T. Pierce. Gentlemen, tell me as much as you want our viewers to know about the film The Wretched, as much as you feel they need to know going in about the film.
Well, what I like people to go in loaded with is it's a story about a young man who moves in with his dad for the summer, and his family's in the midst of breaking apart. The parents might be getting divorced, and he becomes convinced that the woman next door is making her children disappear.
Mm-hmm. Can I
it's
ask?
Very short and not a lot of info, but I like.
That's all people need to know. That is all people need to know. Can I ask you guys? Where was the genesis of the idea for this, and then how did that mothball into the final feature that we see on screen?
Well, we've just always loved witches and got really excited about the idea. For several years, we were just like, what's the witch mythology? Like, witches aren't really creatures; they're usually ghosts or some sort of spirit at the end of a movie. And we were like, what about like the creepy women that live out in the woods, and come out? What would a modern witch be? And that was sort of the germ of the idea. And then we started digging into, we love mythology, so we started reading about all the different witches throughout the world. And we found one called Black Annis. It's a UK myth about this blue-faced hag that lives underneath a tree and devours children. And we're like, this is terrifying. And then we found another one. We looked through a ton, but the other one that sort of we worked into our movie a lot is called the Boo Hag. It's this Appalachian myth about this skin-stealing witch who you can salt her skin and she'll burn alive. And we just thought those were kind of cool, witchy sort of fairy tales. And we kind of built the mythology around our creature around that with a couple of our own rules. And we just got excited about the idea of creating sort of rules in the same way that like vampires and zombies have like 50 different rules, and that's part of what makes them exciting movies is that you can kind of follow, like, can the vampire come inside? Has he been invited? Can you see him in the reflection? Does he have a shadow? All these different rules make it exciting. So we kind of wanted to build out our own little witchy rules. We wanted to define the witch as a creature with rules like those other classic monsters, because we felt like it really hadn't been taken advantage of yet.
Listening to you guys talking there, and I've seen the film 3 times now. I've watched it now, and
cool.
The one thing it reminded me a lot of was Fright Night. You know, that's a horror film I love. I think we kind of dubbed it here at Banterflix, Fright Night Summer Vacation is what we dubbed the Wretched. You know, were those was films like that, because it does feel like a wonderful throwback to the horror movies of the 80s. You know, were those things that were deliberate nods? I know people have mentioned the likes of Rear Window and the likes of Disturbia, but for me, the film that was there, definitely in parts, was, you know, nods to stuff like Fright Night.
Yeah, we're massive fans of Fright Night. We probably watched that VHS to death when we were kids. It's just kind of ingrained in our sort of storytelling brains, I think. That's just sort of a simple way into like a cool, you know, creature. It's probably our favorite vampire movie.
I also think it was that time period in films like Fright Night where we were allowed to make scary but fun horror movies that were like kind of thrill ride and had elements of comedy but gore and creepy moments. So I think we really wanted to make a fun horror movie again, just because horror's been taking itself very, very seriously in the last 4 or 5 years, and I love a lot of that very serious horror. But I was missing those fun rides like Fright Night and even like, you know, Gremlins and other stuff like this that kind of has sometimes a camp vibe, but also just kind of a roller coaster, like fun ride vibe. So I think that was something we were trying to embrace, just because we grew up with films like Fright Night and we missed that. So that I think like we consciously were making a nod to Rear Window with the cast, but I think everything else just grew out of our childhood love of certain films.
Yeah, it's okay to be sort of fun and cheesy sometimes. Like, you embrace the genre.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so dour or serious or dark.
It's also, if it's lighter in certain spots, when you do something scary and dark, it contrasts it so much. So you're like, that's really creepy that the movie just got this dark, when a couple scenes ago it was kind of playful and fun, you know?
Was there at any point when you were writing the screenplay, just when you mentioned that you'd done kind of the research into witch mythology, was there at any point you thought of maybe throwing in a Peter Vincent-esque character? You know, I think the only thing we kind of really get in that is it's Google, because I mean, that's the answer for everything now. You know, I think there's a scene where one of our characters literally Googles witchcraft. But, you know, was there at any point you kind of thought of, you know, throwing in that type of character that would be present in the local town?
It's an interesting question. It's something we struggle with a lot, because every sort of horror movie needs like the harbinger or the person that sort of explains the creature. And we considered doing that for a while, not necessarily a Peter Vincent character, but like someone in the town that maybe knows about the thing. But anytime there are 2 things going on. One, we didn't want to set the whole movie in the 80s. It's kind of become too cliche, and we love doing our little nod in the opening. We have a little short intro scene that's in the 80s, set in the 80s, but we didn't want the entire movie to take place. That feels like such a gimmick in a way.
It's like a way just to avoid the internet and cell phones, and we're like, we have to figure out how to embrace these things.
The way people, and it just didn't seem honest for us. Like, if I were to encounter some sort of creature or something modern day, you know, like, we didn't want to ignore cell phones, and we didn't want to ignore the internet, because that's what everybody does. People, you know, like, you know, the recent Halloween movie came out, and I actually loved a lot about it, but I hate when they put the cell phone in Jell-O, like, for no good reason. It's just one of those cringeworthy moments, and we didn't want to do that either. So for us, that was one of the biggest challenges of the screenplay, is like, okay, I would look up online and look for things, and I would have cell phones. And at the end of the day, for us, the sort of the big solution, and you know, you can decide if it works for you or not, is we just wanted to make jokes about it. Like, what if he found basically a blog that feels like it was made by somebody that maybe encountered this a long time ago,
or lives in their mom's basement.
but if you search hard enough, you can find info. And we kind of figured this out doing our deep dive into mythology about every weirdo in the world has posted YouTube clips or weird things about like different creatures they believe,
or why this witch is real,
where it
and what her
exists,
things
or
are.
even as far as like, I know somebody was a witch, stuff. And we were just like, we even toyed with the idea of having like a vlogger or somebody online that he finds.
Well, it's kind of a funny thing too, is we made fun of it because it was Wikipedia. We kind of wanted to like point at and be like, should you really trust all this information you found on the internet? Like maybe some of it's right, maybe some of it's wrong, so it was more, it's a weird thing, but in the end, I'm really glad we chose to say that the internet exists and that cell phones exist, because they do. We have to figure out how to incorporate them into horror stories. I know it's like, a cell phone and the internet makes an easy save that's like one dial away, but you can work them in and still have terrible things happen, so.
Yeah, it also opens up, gentlemen, to the fact that we could have fake news for witches. Maybe we've just been getting it wrong all these years, but let's not go down that segue. If I could ask you both, I suppose this is a nice point to bring in. You guys have a family lineage with horror. Your father worked on Evil Dead. He worked with Sam Raimi. So what was it like, kind of growing up with horror and cinema being such a big part of your lives?
It was just, it inspired us to make films, because those guys, Sam and Bruce and my dad and all those guys, when they finished shooting Evil Dead, they just piled into our basement in Detroit to finish the final effects sequence in the movie, the big meltdown. My dad and Tom Sullivan were doing that. And Drew and I just saw it as like, that's how you make a movie. You do it yourself. It's like DIY. You just find people that are good at what they do, and you find all passionate people, and you just make it happen. And that's what we did with The Wretched. We tried to get this movie made out in LA with production companies and studios, and they all told us like, oh, we don't do monster movies because creatures are too expensive to do. We don't want to make any movies unless it's just somebody trapped in a house and they're scared that somebody is outside of the house trying to get in. And we were like, no, we want to do this movie with like, there's a witch and there's a creepy tree and there's a creature and these weird effects are happening, and I need to make this type of film. So we just went and raised the money ourselves and put together the team ourselves, and just like went and shot in our home state, because that's what we learned from the Evil Dead crew.
And then how does that then relate to on set? I'm always intrigued with directorial partnerships, and then even more so when it's brothers. What does that relate to then on the day-to-day kind of filming on the shoot?
Well, it's kind of a boring answer in that by the time we've stepped on set, we've worked it to death, because we've spent a couple of years writing the thing. And I'm an artist, so I do storyboards professionally. So we've designed the creature, we've storyboarded every shot in the movie. Like, we've done all the creative sort of things. The sort of like the last sort of pass, what you're doing on set is, kind of managing people and just communicating that vision. But we both understand that vision so perfectly to that point that you're just trying to do the best job to bring it to camera. And it's actually just great because we have two people to talk to everybody. Like, if we have to divide up, one can go to, talk to the costume department. The other can talk to production design. Like, you get exhausted. It's a marathon directing. So we have two brains. When one of us gets tired and gets, you answer 700 questions a day. And after the 400th question, I can be like, Brett, you take a couple of these questions. So it's just a great collaboration. And it's also just, you're constantly doubting yourself on set, because, we've spent so much time thinking about the thing, and it's great to just have another champion like that's sort of backing you up, because you can't let anybody see you doubt yourself when you're on set. You're like, oh, is this the right shot? Is this the right way? Should we cut that line? Yeah. And then I can turn.
And that's
to
when
Brett.
I come in and I'm like, Drew's awesome. He knows what he's talking about. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but you fill in each other's holes, like where something's not working, you figure it out. So I don't know how people direct a movie without a sibling.
It's such an advantage. I think that's why we've seen so many brother and sister teams. And I think when it's not brothers or sisters, a lot of times the people that are successful, they have like a best friend they grew up with that they trust intrinsically
to produce or something.
Yeah, and they just are that person for them.
Yeah, Drew, if I could come back to you mentioned there about working on the storyboards for this, and a big part of this as well is practical effects as well, because you're working on a low budget, you're working with practical effects. You guys have mentioned that you kind of grew up with that type of stuff from a young age. The challenge of, I suppose, bringing your idea, what you have on a storyboard, to then bring it through to the film. What is the kind of big challenge? And is there anything there that you feel like kind of it never quite got to what you wanted it to be? Or is there anything when you suddenly realize and you see it on the big screen that it's so much more, it's much more creepier? Like I'm thinking of stuff for me anyway, personally, stuff to start with, like the buck as well, you know, that creeped me, but then, you know, I'm a country boy, that just creeps me.
It's a funny thing, like David Fincher, he always says you only get like 70% of what you aim for, and you're lucky if you get that, you know? And that's definitely true, but if, you know, for a lot of scenes, we always wanted more shots or we wanted different angles and things, but you're always limited. And that's sort of the exciting challenge of filmmaking. But yeah, ultimately, I think a lot of the scenes, there are definitely a couple of scenes that really came out, I think, even better. And the ones that I think always surprise me are kind of the department that, in a weird way, it's like that magic that you as a director, you can't help, but you just hope that it turns out. It's performance-based stuff. So when you have like the scene, like there's the confrontation scene on the stairs with the mother and the kid, and that scene, we had designed it that way and we had planned to shoot it that way, but the performances just felt like they were so
better than we thought.
They just hit it in a way that we didn't expect. And that's, for us, I think the things that surprise us more than anything, it's not usually the effects or the shots or the whatever, because that's the stuff we've sort of dived deep into. It's when an actor just brings some little nugget to a performance that just gives it a sparkle. Yeah. Those are the things that I think really pop for us. But yeah. Did I answer all your questions about the effects? I got excited.
You did indeed. You know, just bringing it back to what you guys, I think it was yourself, Brett, that kind of said about going out and just filming it. Here in Northern Ireland, we have such a kind of indigenous local filmmaking scene. There's local film. I mean, it seems at the minute that Irish filmmakers are slowly taking over the horror genre. We're going to be working on Evil Dead. We've got the guys we're going to be working on the next Texas Chainsaw. But what's your advice to filmmakers right now? Listen, just hearing you guys kind of saying, especially now in this kind of new weird COVID world that we're going to be living in for the next potentially year, even not more so, of just going out and filming stuff right now, not waiting for kind of, as you kind of said, waiting for producers to get stuff, but just getting your friends, the people you know, to get out there and filming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the best advice you can have right now with the pandemic occurring and us all being stuck at home more because we can't get out the door and actually go shoot anything, is what benefited Drew and us was pre-planning and rewriting like crazy. Like we were really brutal on our own script. We rewrote it and rewrote it. Even all the way up until the day of shooting, we would change things just to try to make it better. But just get it to a point where you've been so brutal on it and you let other people be brutal on it and you fix it, like put that time in. But also, like, if you want to go make a film, like, and you want to do it as soon as like the pandemic makes it so we can, hopefully it goes away or we get a vaccine, just have all your prep work done, man. Have your killer script, already be talking to investors for it while you're locked away, because that's something you can do that's not fun, but you might as well get it out of the way. Just like get all the pieces off the board. They're putting any roadblocks in the way for you to start shooting. And that's like your script, storyboarding the movie, and the money. You know, it's like jump on those three and just get those done if you can, you know.
For you guys, like, when do you kind of foresee yourselves being able to get out and get back filming again? You know, I was listening to Spike Lee doing an interview here in the BBC last week, and he's kind of maybe looking at maybe July, maybe next year, kind of before he thinks he'll really be able to get out and film. Like, for yourselves, like, when do you think we will start to see the cogs in the machine kind of getting? I know we're kind of seeing film sets and studios open up across the world slowly, but when do you guys envision yourself being able to get back on set?
I think Spike Lee is kind of hitting it. Like, that's when things are going to be back to normal-ish for most
If we have a vaccine. Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, if we have a vaccine and if everything, I mean, things are going to get really back to normal in a year and a half, probably, right? That's when things will feel normal. I think there's going to be a lot of crews and a lot of people that try and figure it out and sort it out in the next couple of months. And there's been a lot of talk about, like, indie film sets, maybe they can go back earlier because crews are smaller, but they don't necessarily have the money or the infrastructure to sort of manage the risk of everybody, the things. Yeah. So it's almost harder for indie film sets, even though it's a third the people.
I just read today, like, the new Jurassic Park film is going to go back to shoot, and the cost of going back to shoot with implementing the safety measures is $5 million. So indie movies aren't going to be able to afford that issue. So I don't think it's gonna be any. I mean, it's the unfortunate thing is, unless you're a giant tentpole movie that they have to make happen, it's gonna be when we get a vaccine, which I really hope is, you know, early next year is when we start seeing that. So I mean, yeah, I'm hopeful, you know, but I think that's really the only way for everybody to go back to making
But
films.
like Brett said, this is the time to like really, you know, do another draft of that script, get it that much tighter, make a lookbook, you know, make a sizzle reel, like get it into like the point where it's like a perfect package.
Yeah,
you
because
know?
shooting is the fun part. The really not fun part is all the prep work. And also the least fun is finding financing. So, hey, you're stuck inside. Like, now it's time to do the homework you haven't wanted to do forever. And let's figure out how you're going to get that money to make that movie, you know?
We are going to have to bring the interview to an end. I guess since I could quite happily sit and talk to you guys a lot more and just about kind of going back to the 80s and horror and all that kind of thing, I will not indulge myself too much, you know. But I wanted to ask you a big thing for yourselves and a big success for your film of late. I mean, in fact, we have IFC have kind of carried on. It's been released in America, and it's been the drive-in screenings that have really kind of helped the film find its audience at the box office. You know, we here in the UK, drive-in screenings are a thing, but they're not a part of the cinematic psyche over here. So can for you guys kind of tell us a wee bit what that meant for you to still, whilst we're still in lockdown, still to have your film out there being, you know, available to audiences who want to see it and as close to the normal cinematic model as they kind of can. How big a thing that's been for you guys?
Yeah, well, we feel like we made an audience movie. I mean, we played a ton of festivals. We played Fright Fest and Grimfest in the UK, and we got such an amazing response, and there's an energy when you watch a movie with an audience. So when, you know, this all hit, COVID hit, we just didn't think we were going to get that at all. So for us, it's just the greatest silver lining, you know, we could ever have hoped for, because in this process, because we didn't have any marketing dollars, it got a lot of people to see our movie. And word of mouth just sort of took over. Like, the audiences have sort of championed our movie. We didn't expect to expand or last a week, you know, or two, but we're at 6 weeks now, and it just keeps growing because like the audiences have sort of spread the word. So
it's also like the drive-in. We made a fun summer creature feature right when we were hitting the summer and nobody could go outside, you know, and it's kind of the perfect movie for the drive-in. And people, as much as everyone watches so many streaming services at home, Netflix and all this stuff, people still long for that communal experience of going to a theater and watching a movie. And right now the drive-in's the only way to get that. And horror movies are especially that type of movie. Like, you want to go so you can hear people, you know, gasp or scream at the right moments. People laugh at the jokes. Horror movies are built to be that way. So it just makes sense that's where we were able to find our audience, because that's the type of movie it is.
Horror communities are so tight. Like, I love going to all the festivals because everybody, it's half of the fun of going to festivals is that everybody hangs out, and it's more about the friendships and the hangout than it is even watching the horror movies.
Yeah.
And you kind of get that when people go to drive-ins.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, I guess since you have answered this, but I had written this down as a question, so I will ask it anyway. What is it about the horror genre that works so well for the drive-in cinematic experience?
It's just that, like, I think the history of the drive-in, like, at least in the US, is kind of campy sci-fi, scary horror films, or even things that were like too controversial and unrated to play at the drive-in. So there's this exciting aspect that you're kind of going to see something that you're not supposed to see when you go to the drive-in, or something that wasn't a respected genre. And like Evil Dead played drive-ins in the States when it first came out because it was unrated and they were having a hard time getting into regular theaters because the theaters didn't want to play it. So being a horror movie at the drive-in is like the perfect mix. It's just literally what the drive-in was built on, and why they blew up is that they were like an escape for kids to go see things they weren't supposed to go see, so that they could make out in the back of their mom's car and buy, you know, crappy treats and all this other stuff. So it was kind of like doing a bunch of things you're not supposed to do. So it's attractive.
I'm kind of tempted to push you there, Brett, and say, is this kind of speaking there from personal experience there in a few of those statements?
It's kind of an intangible thing though, because, you know, if you've ever told a ghost story at, you know, when you're camping in front of a campfire, like it's got a certain vibe, whether if you tell it there or if you tell it in your living room, it's got a totally different vibe. And the drive-ins, you're under the stars outside at night. Like it feels like where a horror movie might take place, you know, like it definitely has like this quality to it. Just like telling scary stories.
Yeah, it just works. It's a magical place, honestly. It's great.
And just my last question, gentlemen, you might feel you maybe don't want to reveal too much right now, but what kind of are you working on that we will see you guys with delivering next?
We got a bunch of things that we love and we're really excited about. We're hoping one of them goes. But the one thing that I think we're probably the most excited about is we have a new take on a werewolf that we just think is really special and unique. We want to
just something we're really excited about. It was an idea we had before we even shot The Wretched, and we just loved it. And we were like, maybe we can do this. And we were like, I don't think our budget covers a werewolf.
Yeah. So we want to do it right. We're obviously huge practical effects makeup guys, and we want to do it mostly practical. But we're just gonna get our Robotine or Rick Baker and
and run with that studio's money. No, I'm just kidding.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us during lockdown, and we look forward to seeing what you guys work on next.
We need to rest. We need a break. Please, we need a break.
Come on.
We need to rest. I can't do it.
Take my hand.
You don't know what we've been through. There could be anything.
Get in the water.
I'm not getting in the water.
If you don't get in the water, you're going to die. You're wasting your ammo. Stop it. Stop. Everybody move back. You need to move back. You're making me animal. We have to do something, son.
She's dead. You're wasting ammo. Mike, they're gonna hear us. Come on. Move out.
So I'm joined now by the writer, director, and producer of Rogue, which is out now on VOD and DVD. So hello to MJ Bassett. Hello to you.
Hi.
You are all the way in LA. I'm in Belfast. Just before we started this interview, we were kind of discussing whether or not we were going to swap who's getting the better deal. I think it might be you. You know,
I think it might be me.
Possibly.
Just today. Possibly. Listen, I like Belfast. As I said, I like Belfast. I've shot a movie in Belfast. It's a great city, full of the friendliest people. I love our island. What a beautiful country. So yes. I wouldn't reject it out of hand, but if you could guarantee me some good weather, that's all I really want.
Look, I'm from Tyrone, and that reference might get lost you, but we are lost without the rain in Tyrone. So I cannot make such promises. But we are not here to talk about weather. I'm sure we could. We're here to talk. We are here to talk about.
We always talk about weather.
That's true. We're here to talk about your movie. And can you start by telling our viewers and our listeners, as much as you want them to know going into the film, what Rogue is all about?
Okay, Rogue is an action movie with a little bit of a horror vibe to it about a group of mercenaries led by Megan Fox's character who are sent to rescue a group of abducted girls from an Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda kind of organization in Africa. The extraction goes horribly wrong. They are forced to go on the run. Take refuge in an old abandoned farm somewhere in southern Africa, which they discover used to be an old lion breeding farm, and a lion or something similar is still around, and they have to spend the night waiting for rescue and slowly getting picked off by the creature which is stalking them, and the Al-Shabaab guys close in. So it's a tense, action-packed, horrific, character-driven movie. It's good fun.
I have to say, I watched it in preparation for this interview and had a lot of fun. There's things I do want to come back and kind of discuss certain aspects of the film that I really like. But can I ask, where was the genesis of the idea for this? Where did it kind of mothball, and where did it come from? Where did it mothball out? And I know that yourself and your daughter kind of co-wrote this
Yeah.
and worked on this together.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know what that process was
Well,
like. And
okay, so Rogue is a synthesis of a couple of personal passions of mine. So I've been a conservationist naturalist my whole life. I wanted to be a vet. I ran a wildlife hospital when I was young. That's my great passion. I always thought that's the area of the world I'd work in, right? I wanted to be a wildlife vet in Africa. Didn't work out that way. I ended up on TV, and then that morphed into becoming a filmmaker and a kind of genre filmmaker. And I made, a bunch of movies, a bunch of TV. Generally, those things are, fantasy, action, sci-fi kind of things. I made lots and lots of action, and I love doing that. I love blowing shit up. I like doing gunfights. I like car chases. And when a producer friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to executive produce some low-budget movies which have an environmental theme?" I was like, "Yeah, but I don't want to executive produce them. I actually want to make these things." She says, "No money." I said, "Don't care about the money. An opportunity for me to bring my passion for natural history and shooting in Africa and my love of shooting guns and blowing crap up into one movie." So then I kind of reversed engineered what would I like to tell a story about. And I'd read about lion farming in Southern Africa, where like 12,000 lions are in captivity right now, just being farmed for their body parts. They're bred, they're killed, their parts are stripped from them, and they're shipped to China or Vietnam or Southeast Asia, where traditional medicine uses them. And then some of those lions are also, they're killed as part of canned hunting. So basically the males are bred, and then they're taken out to be shot by some idiot who feels it empowers them to have a lion's head on their wall. And the cubs are used for the tourist industry. So if you go to Africa or somewhere and you have a photograph opportunity with a lion cub, it's almost certainly its future is to be killed for body parts. So we shouldn't do it. And I wanted to have a movie which had that as an underlying message without being just a depressing eco movie, because I believe movies should be entertaining. That's what I want for my movies. So the story of Rogue, kind of like, how can I get this to happen? How can I have lions as my shark or my velociraptor, or the equivalent? Isabel, who's my daughter, who also appears in the movie, she's a really good writer. So I pitched her this idea. We kicked it around. Said, "Hey, I'm busy. I think I was making Altered Carbon or something at the time. I said, "Don't have time to write this. Can you give me a first draft, see what it looks like?" She wrote the first draft, then I rewrote it, and then we argued about it, and then finally the script became what it was, and that was the evolution of the process. Arguing with my daughter mostly.
I'm not going to come in between the two using that. Definitely not. But
well, she'd win. That's a terrifying thing.
That's okay. There we go. I'll say nothing on that. But you are a director and a filmmaker that loves the genre. You love action. You love horror. You said it yourself. You love to blow shit up. What is it about the genre and those kind of genres that you love that allows? Because we just concluded our first horror film festival here in Belfast. Okay, it's been digital, but one of the remits that we've always said with that was that we wanted to show that horror is not just the old cliche that I always use, that it's a man in a mask chasing a busty girl through a darkened forest. There's more to that. There's more to that, particularly for horror. But what is it about the genres of action horror that you love for you as a narrative device and a way in for storytelling?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things to unpack from that. One is that obviously the notion of horror being any one thing is crazy, because it's actually incredibly broad church, right? So horror is always a personal perspective. And as I've got older as a filmmaker as well, you try and, initially when I started out, you try and chase an audience. You say, okay, my first movie is a thing called Death Watch. It was a horror set in the trenches of World War I. And the parameters are, when I pitched that movie, it was 9 days in a hole in the ground. And how hard can it be, right? But it can be many, many things. It can be a psychological thing. It can be a visceral, gory thing. It's whatever you want it to be. And so the same thing with any of the genres. They're kind of just they're a wraparound for stories you want to tell. I made a fantasy movie called Solomon Kane, which is just a story of redemption. The fact that he's wielding a sword and there are demons and there's magic, and that's just an excuse for me as a filmmaker, as an audience member, to see shit that I like to see on screen. Always you're looking for a kind of character journey within that. And sometimes within genre, the character journeys can be slightly more, say, broad or enlarged or enhanced. There can be a bigger journey. I think when you're doing straight drama, and I've done a couple of straight dramas, and I always feel like I'm straitjacketed a little bit, because I want to be bigger and more, I want to play on a big canvas. So as a filmmaker, though, when I'm going into Rogue, for instance, I knew that I wanted to make a movie that was about something, had this underlying theme about conservation. I knew I wanted to make a movie that had a female lead as a soldier who had kind of smothered her own maternal instincts and her femininity in order to exist in a very male-driven world. So that was her character story, and that the rescuing of these kids and then kind of going up against this lioness kind of gave her power, because she realized that you can be a strong woman without losing your femininity, but you can be as bad as any dude. So those are kind of the ideas, and to play that on a broad canvas. Personally, as a filmmaker, I like to just make those movies. It becomes less about narrative device, and it is like, that's the world I physically like to play in. I like to go to Africa or Eastern Europe, or just somewhere where it's physically challenging. And I love to blow shit up. I like to fire guns. I like to jump in cars and do car chases and have complex camera equipment. And so physically, that's what I like to do. And you don't really get to do that when you're doing, domestic dramas. I get bored. I just get bored. I like to do shit when I spill loads of blood. It's like when I was doing Ash versus Evil Dead. We had 50-gallon canisters of blood and spray guns spraying. It's fun. I'm all about having a good time.
Again, I'm not going to argue. I mean, I love Ash versus Evil Dead. I'm someone who loves the Evil Dead franchise. So, I mean, that is just, as you say, it's something you want to munch popcorn to. It's fun. It's escapism. And I guess in the world that we live in right now, I guess that we need that. And there is a lot of we've got the expletive rating, blowing shit up, particularly at the start of this film. It's a pretty intense opening act. And I mean, you've worked in TV stuff like Strike Back and stuff like that in the past. So, there's clearly a sense what you're doing. You definitely know what you're doing from the very start of that. But I've heard you mention in a few interviews when I was doing a bit of prep for this, you've talked about this being low budget. You've talked about this actually being shot in sequence. And I'm just kind of saying, like, was that something that from your point of view, was that just the way it worked out? Was it because of budget? It meant that, people, as you go on and get closer to the end, people can be let go and moved on. Is that a key? I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, that must be, for you as a filmmaker, a fantastic method to be able to go from start to finish in sequence. But it also must be at the same time a hell of a task to do.
You've kind of answered your own question. It's incredibly freeing.
I do that a lot, MJ. I apologize. I'm it's almost like a politician. I ask my own question and I'll almost answer it for you.
Just call me when you need me, okay? But no, I mean, it's very, very rare. And it's the only time in my career that I've shot in sequence. And again, being the producer of the movie, I had a lot of leverage to be able to say, this is what I want to do. But also the movie is low budget. It's a lower budget than most episodes of television. It's lower budget than almost all my episodes of Strike Back, but the freedom that you get with a low budget is nobody's breathing down your neck. There's not a lot of money on the line. And so you get to make choices you want to make. So I said, all right, this movie is essentially a one location movie, because once the opening 25 minutes is done, which is a relentless, big action sequence, I wanted it to be that. I want the audience to be as exhausted as the soldiers are, just move, escape. And then finally they manage to take a breath. So once we move to the main location, the production never left that place. So you can shoot in sequence. And what that gives you the ability to do is to build character and let the actors say, okay, well, tomorrow I'm developing on what I did today, rather than saying, oh, we're doing scene 63 today, and then tomorrow we're doing scene 2, and then tomorrow we're doing scene 99, which is, professionally, we can all do that. But there's something wonderfully freeing about saying, hey, tomorrow we're going to come back and we didn't really finish the scene that we were going to shoot today properly. I'm going to carry on with that, catch up where we need to be. It's a wonderful, freeing, creatively empowering way of working. The budget of the movie was so low that nobody was saying, do it another way. I'm like, this is what I want to do. As I ran into problems, technical or financial, I just go, okay, I'll write something different. I'll write a different piece of dialogue. I'll have the character do something else. If like Sisander, who plays Patar, like hurt his knee, and it's like, okay, your character's got a limp, right? It's like, great.
There we go.
And you employ all the techniques and all the skills that I've learned over 20 odd years of doing this now, where I can go and make a movie like Rogue, which takes all my strike back knowledge, all my making TV knowledge, because TV it shoots really quickly. You can then say, okay, I know how to make this. So when I pitch the script to my finances, they're like, well, this is going to cost a fortune. Like, no. Tell me how much you've got. I can make this for that. And I know where I can sacrifice stuff. I know where I'll compromise. I'll have 2 Jeeps in the chase rather than 3, or this or that, or I won't have this piece of camera equipment on that day because I know I don't really need it. There's no indulgence. There's no fat. But that only really comes with experience. So, my first movie, Death Watch 20 odd years ago, and then this movie, the budgets are kind of the same, actually. I've been through bigger budget stuff, and I've actually comfortably come back down to smaller because of control. It's all about creative control.
Was there a sense, in a way, from listening to you speak, MJ, that it was almost liberating, in a way, working on a project like that, compared to, because as you said, you have worked on bigger budget projects, you've worked on big budget or on TV and things like that as well. But to work on a project like that, it must be, from a pure filmmaker point of view, it must be wonderfully creative. It must be wonderfully liberating to be able to work, out on location, out on set, and as you're going to say, filming linear and working on this very minimalist budget.
Yeah, it's freeing, and you got to. The money's the thing. Money and time are the same thing in filmmaking, right? So that you haven't got much money, then you haven't got much time. You haven't got much time, then you can't do the things you want to do unless you really, really know what you want to do and how you can do them. There's not a moment where I'm sort of pondering what my next move's going to be. Like, I wonder where I'm going to put my camera next. It's not. Camera goes there, it goes here, it goes there. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. And it absolutely just gives me, you take responsibility. I take responsibility for the good movies I made. I take responsibility for the bad movies I made. It's just what I've done, right? With Rogue, it's the closest to pure me, right? If that means anything, like if you like it, it's because of me. If you hate it, it's because of me. Right? My producer was a fantastic partner on this. She helped, she organized the finance and made the movie work. But as the other producer in it, I'm the one who drives everything else about the production. And it's great. And then surrounding yourself with a cast of people who are like-minded. Megan was an interesting choice, and I'm sure we'll talk about Megan in a second. But so she was the unknown element to making this. Everybody else in the movie, Philip Winchester and Brandon Orett and Susanna Henner and Greg Krieg and even Isabel, my daughter, I knew them all from other stuff. So we came together as a kind of a group just to make this movie. Putting Megan in there, putting a kind of a known A-list Hollywood actor in that mix was the most interesting, kind of challenging aspect in a way. How is she going to react? How is she going to behave and be in this quite challenging world? She was great, as it turned out. She was fabulous. She loved it.
See, now you're doing my thing. Now you're answering my questions. Now I'm asking questions.
I've done these things before, honey. I know what you're going to
do. I know, but because you do see in this, you're working with a lot of people you've worked before. Before I forget it or we move on, I have to say Philip is absolutely fantastic in this. I think he's great. I think he's great. And one thing I do like about the film is how you explore and play with kind of the traditional gender stereotypical kind of ideas and connotations. We have Megan Fox. She's the hard ass. She's the tough. You don't know whether or not she is just her characteristic, that she's not maternal, that she is as strong, or is it something that she's adapted to work with these group of men? And then you have Philip's character, who's the caring guy. I'm going to ask. I don't want to get into spoilerific territory because I do want to talk about Megan. But where did the Backstreet Boys come from? Because I just is that from you? Is that from your daughter? Is that? And I don't want to talk too much about where there is a Backstreet Boys reference in this film. Where did that come? Is that from the cast? Is that from you? Is that from your daughter?
No, it was. I wanted I wanted like an earworm song, right? To hum. I just think it's fun. I like these cultural touchstones. My daughter wrote actually "Come On Eileen" by Dexter's Midnight Runners. Okay. Right. Which is obviously a fantastic earworm and a fantastic song. I was concerned that song wouldn't travel internationally quite so well. And I also thought it was a little too old for the characters, because you got to think, what did they grow up with? And I remember, what the hell, it was Seth Rogen's got a big thing about the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
And he made a movie called The End, I think it was. and that song always stuck in my head. And I'm not a Backstreet Boys fan, but damn, that song was catchy. So I thought we'd write that in, never thinking that it would end up being Backstreet Boys because we couldn't afford them. And then like 2 days before we're shooting, and it's in the script. I mean, the words they're singing are in the script. And 2 days before shooting, I said, do we have the rights to this? It's like they're singing on day one of the shoot. So we really need to make sure. And nobody bothered, me, I'm the producer as well, but none of the production had got so we had to make this panic phone call, get the script to their management, have it approved. So, and they turned out, I mean, I don't know whether the boys read the script or how we got it, but they approved it for a very reasonable price, it has to be said. And the Backstreet Boys became part of the story.
The rest is history. You like to think that Howie, of course, that he okayed it personally, but
you've seen the movie. I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see. But for you mentioned Megan there, and Megan was kind of, as you say, the unknown. I mean, I love her as a performer. I mean, yes, she's known for the Transformers, and we've seen her do action stuff. Here, she's being kind of the central badass is the better way with her character. Being the film I love her the most is Jennifer's Body. I just think she's amazing in that film. I think that's a great horror film. But what I mean, bar the kind of thing you were saying that she was great and stuff. What did you find from that great unknown of working with Megan Fox? How did you find that? How did you find her as a performer and getting her kind of geared up in what I think was it 22 days you shot this?
21 days, yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that doesn't. I mean, was there much prep time in getting that kind of no? So of being able to get them in and getting them to work as a believable unit.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It was really hard. So with Megan, when we wrote the script turned out really well. It's got a great part for a leading lady. Megan was not on any list I made because I don't have the perception of her in that way. It's like she wasn't even really part of my world. Jennifer's Body, loved as a movie. Transformers. I'm a feminist, right? I'm a trans woman. What Michael Bay turned her into is nothing that I respect, and and I just thought, okay, well, if that's how she wants to be, that's up to her. But her name came up and I was like, all right, we'll send her the script. She's going to say no and then we can move on. She said yes really quickly and then I went to meet her and I was like, she's nothing like the person that you expect. She's a thoughtful adult woman, mother of 3 children, right, who has this legacy of stuff from 15 years ago in her life. And when we talk about Rogue, she loves the kind of the toughness of the character. She loves the fact that the maternal aspects have been buried so that her soldier could exist in a very male world. She's a very environmentally aware human. And so all of those things really, really, really kind of made us bond over what we could do with the movie. And for her as an actor and the perception that she gives out. So I think Rogue moves the needle a little bit on who Megan Fox is. And then, of course, we didn't have much time, but she was so keen to portray. I mean, that was the first thing she said. I've never handled weapons before. I've never done soldiery stuff before. I'm concerned how I'm going to look. I said, well, listen, stick with me. I've worked with weapons a lot. I've done a lot of tactical stuff. I have friends who I have a full-time military advisor who came on. Philip Winchester, obviously, is so experienced with weapons. So we just surrounded her with as much knowledge and support as we could, so that when she's carrying a gun, she's moving like she means it. And yeah, she only had 2 or 3 days, and that's not enough. It just isn't. But we took the good bits, and she worked really hard, and I think she comes out of the movie pretty well.
Yeah, I think she's great, and I know we're pushed for time, and there's a lot of things I do want to talk about. There's a lot of things I know I'm not going to get time to talk about, but you mentioned, we have a lioness in this film. Mm-hmm. For you, kind of coming from your background and being such a keen animal lover, the fact that we have a CGI creation, and I know I sometimes on this podcast and on the TV show talk about CGI Gribblies, but we have a CGI creation as the lioness. Was that always the plan from day one? Because I was kind of thinking of stuff like, I'm sure you don't want to do like another, is it Roar? Noel Marshall's Roar from the 80s?
Yeah.
A film I loved when I was younger, also Ghost in the Darkness. We don't know where Val Kilmer's accent is going in that film, but I do love that film. Well. But was that something, I mean, was that ever kind of at any in the thought of using live action animals? Was it a case of budget, safety, I suppose from your own ethical point of view of putting, animals in that kind of situation? And they always say don't work with children and don't work with animals, but was that
Well, you
always
just
going
answered again. You just answered your own question, right? So yeah, budget, safety, ethical. They were all part of the consideration. So, I mean, I've worked with lions before. I've worked with lots of big cats. They're unpredictable, dangerous creatures on a film, and they're not to be messed with. They can kill you, and it doesn't. And it happens really fast. So, but obviously in the movie, she's a predator. I wanted to see a lion in a predatory mode, and no animal handler who I know who's ethical will want their cats to behave in that manner because they're in hunting mode, right? So we knew very quickly that real lions were not going to be part of the package, and also the amount of time it would take. I just don't have that indulgence to wait hours and hours and hours for a little bit of behavior that kind of looks right, and then you could kind of cut it in and see if it would match. So very quickly, the real lions. I mean, there are real lions at the very beginning of the movie. And actually, when I was staying in Africa, I stayed near those lions. I could hear them roaring every night. They're amazing. So we spent a lot. So the CG boys went to look at those lions and take measurements and take photographs and try and kind of match our lioness. There's a little bit of puppet work, but we ended up with CG. And the problem with CG, of course, is it's very difficult to do. It's extremely expensive. And, so you fall a little bit before the stall. So like you want it to be like Life of Pi, but you end up with what you end up with. And also, so the trick is to reduce the amount of lion, reduce the monster, make it like Jaws. She's just out there in the darkness. And if there's a bit about the movie I'm less happy with, the CG is not as good maybe as I want it to be. But that's kind of what it is. It's a $2 million movie, right? So that's what you get. And I would never want to put a real animal through the stress of being on a film set unnecessarily. I'd rather take slightly wonky CG over feeling bad about my ethics.
Yeah, because funny, I watched Rogue in preparation for this, and then I went back and rewatched The Ghost in the Darkness, a film, as I say, I absolutely adored when I was younger. Now, viewing it as a supposed adult, there's issues and problems, but let's not go there. But one of the things I read, because you were you always wanted the lioness to be a lioness, female. You didn't, and there was talk of having the as a lion. And I was thinking back to The Ghost in the Darkness, the original lionesses from the true story that it's based on were lionesses, but they were changed, of course, to male lions, just because it looks more, it looks more what a lion should look like, I suppose, on screen. So just kind of, can you just touch on that, that kind of, that argument, that discussion? I suppose it's kind of a short argument when you're the producer. Have I answered my own question again?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, no, because I'm a producer, but I have a financer, and the financer says, "Hey, I can sell this movie better if it's a lion with a mane, right?" And I was like, "Well, no, first of all, it has to be a lioness because the story is about maternity. The story is about a mother protecting her young. So you're absolutely never going to get that from a male lion. Yeah. And also, the lioness reflects Megan's character. So there was so many narrative reasons for that. And by the way, I think you'll find The Ghost in the Darkness, those were two maneless male lions.
Apologies.
If you read The Man-Eaters of Sava, which is based on, I think because I think one of them's in a museum at the Smithsonian.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, still, your comment stands because they used maned lions in Ghost in the Darkness. But I think, people expect a certain thing, and you want to subvert the expectations. And to me, a lioness is the elegance of what a lioness looks like. It's like a tiger, the lines are perfect. For me, a male lion looks like John Bon Jovi from the 80s, it's like that big mane. And
some people would like that, some people would.
Hey, I'm a Bon Jovi fan, honey. I think you look great, but
in the 80s, not now.
Exactly.
The big hair in the 80s. I want to bring the interview to a close because, as I said, this is junket. You have other people to speak to. But the film does close with some facts and some figures that I know you want. And I know you've touched on that early on in this interview. Can you just touch a wee bit on that again? Tell us about some of the facts behind some of the things you wanted to bring about the film.
Yeah, I mean, the movie has this environmental theme to it, and there are so many eco issues in the world right now. We know that the planet is kind of slowly dying. So to pick any one thing is a kind of reductionist way of looking at the environment. But at the end of the movie, there's a little card comes up and it explains about lion farming. There are these, maybe 12,000 lions being farmed perfectly legally, by the way, for their body part. And I personally think that's terrible, but there's so many terrible things. But I would have given more information. I was only allowed to do so much. The Directors Guild doesn't allow you to put links to charities or websites or information. But really, the film exists. The film entirely exists so that people will read that card at the end. It's so important to me to not want to be preachy. You can watch the movie entirely and enjoy it. I hope it's an enjoyable movie no matter what happens. But if you get to the end and you read the card and you realize, I'm not saying give money to a charity. I'm just saying be aware of the terrible things we're doing. And I'm not saying go vegan. I'm just saying, wow, if we're doing this, if traditional medicines are doing this, the destruction of the habitats of these animals and the animals themselves is bad. Just be aware. The movie I've just come back from Kenya making another movie, and that's got a poaching theme to it as well. And I try not to be too Western about it, and like saying you shouldn't do this because our view is right and your view is wrong. It's just like, as moral creatures, surely there's a better way of living in the world.
Yeah, I think that is a lovely sentiment. It's a lovely sentiment to bring this interview to a close on. Hopefully I'm not going to answer any more questions. I can carry on this interview and answer all these questions
you do
myself.
Do it without me. I'm gonna
that's a way. Well, it'll all be good. But MJ Bassett, thank you so much for your time. And as we said at the start of this interview, the film is out on VOD and DVD now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're a good man. I love you forever.
Why being weird?
I want you to take me out.
And what was the food like?
Like really fancy fruit. Come on.
What?
Eat, please. Like lychee.
Yeah, okay, fair. Fancy fruit. What else?
Grilled octopus.
And what was the weather like?
So warm that you could sit outside and you could smell all the food cooking on the grill and smell the salt water coming from the sea. There's just no way that I'm going to leave you on your own for 2 days. I'm sorry.
I want you to.
What if something happens to you?
It wouldn't be your fault.
Rose?
Help me, someone! Help me!
I found someone. It's a girl.
Oh my God.
We need to get rid of her.
Why do you live like this? The windows, the lights, the traps. Rose, why you go outside?
So that's a clip of Rose, A Love Story, and I'm joined now by two of the film's producers, Sara Huxley and April Kelley. Hello to you both, ladies. It is the world premiere of the film, and I'll start with yourself, April. Tell our viewers and our listeners as much as they need to know about Rose, A Love Story going in to watch it.
It's always, it's tricky not to make a silly answer there. So you are about to see a gothic love story. You're about to get really invested in this couple who are battling an illness between them, Rose with this illness, and it has a vampire twist.
There we go. That's all good. I thought we would get through this without mentioning the word vampire, because I know that's a thing that there is in the film. There's no, I don't think, having watched it yesterday, there's not an outright mention to the word vampire. Feel free to correct me, ladies.
No, there isn't. But we've been trying to keep it under wraps since we wrapped, and it's just how it's been described, and all of the reviews are coming up, which is it's good. It's good that they are acknowledging that, because there hasn't been any vampire type stories, and it's really hard to beat Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so we're quite up against it. But that nuance of the vampire actually represents so many other elements to it. It doesn't mean just vampire. We saw in one of the reviews that it was parallel to dealing with a loved one with a terminal illness and how you tackle that in a relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's kind of one of the big things I picked up from watching it yesterday on The Player. Sara, can I ask yourself, because this is your company, Mini Productions, if I'm correct, how did you guys get involved with this, and how did this end up being the first feature that you had both produced? And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, you're right. Yeah, so April and I have run mini productions for a good few years now together. April founded the company in 2012, but we sort of came together and started working on short films actually in 2014 and 15. We love a short film, Jim. That's how all good ideas start. And it was really how we started as young producers to test our skills and learn how to operate, and also test out ideas and work with new filmmakers and really exciting writers and directors and talent. And the short films just basically grew over the past few years, and we started to work with bigger and bigger talent, better and better scripts, more exciting things were happening. And we met Jen quite a few years ago at Aesthetic Film Festival. One of our short films, one of our first ever short films was there. A dear short film of ours called Tea for Two, and she was there with one of her shorts, and we just hit it off and stayed friends with her basically for quite a few years. And then we actually shot a very short horror with her for a bit of fun. And then her agent, Rob, part of the artist partnership and the development partnership, she put us in front of him and said, you know, I really would love these producers on this. When they were kind of a little bit further along the project, they had Matt, they repped Matt as a writer, and they had Matt and Sophie on board, and Jen, and we were, I guess, the final piece of the puzzle. And it was just a really great team, basically, and we all hit it off. And that was it. I mean, I think the script landed on our desk in September, October. Well, no, we got the green light September, October. It was the beginning of that summer that we had first been chatting about it. And it all became real in September, October. And we just got back from LA to shoot another short, because apparently that's what we do. Mad things. We just had a few months to put it all together, and the rest is history.
If I could ask, and this is a question I often ask directors, how they make that jump from shorts to features, how they find that. I'm interested from yourselves from a producing point of view. Did you find much of a difference for yourselves? Was it a case of, I know I always talk to directors, it's more about, you know, working on a short helps you with time management and et cetera, things like that, and how you have to know what you have to get shot through a daily process. From a producing point of view, give me an insight about that jump from shorts to feature.
Want to kick it off, Sara?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's the practical element of the financing structure is very different. You run the accounts differently. You can contract people differently. You run payrolls differently. You're normally using the tax credit. So there's a whole load of stuff like that is a big jump for producers, and you have to understand it and get your head around it, you know, or have another producer who does. And we learned so much in that process. So, you know, because you're ultimately really making a product in a feature film that you can sell. And whereas shorts, a lot of the time, it's like you might not make any money from them, and it's about the festivals and the accolades. There is a difference in the way that features are packaged, and certainly in the distribution side. And it's, you know, it's got a different journey. But we had worked on bigger stuff, April and I. We really worked hard to freelance on much bigger shows with much bigger budgets, and push our own shorts to bigger budgets and be more and more challenging, and shooting all different mediums and genres, so that we were so ready for a feature film. The nice way of saying it is it's just like a short film but longer, but it does have its challenges even from the scripting stage.
I'd also add that, I mean, from the get-go, this was our goal, including LFF. We didn't think it would happen, especially on our debut feature. But I think Sara might agree. We really pride ourselves on the way we produce short films. We really do think about the entire product, even though you know you're not going to make any money, even from how you present that and how you find an audience, because directors and writers are very rightly so trying to get every penny on the screen, whereas actually you need a few pennies for people to actually be able to see the film, because that's what you're doing. You're trying to you're trying to elevate your own career. And then even through there, like short films have become, they've got a lot of worth now, and we now have 5 of our short films on Amazon Prime, and that's not because we want to make our money. Well, I mean, we would like to make our money back, but
but that's never going to happen, Jim.
That's not the reason. That's not the reason. It's for the art and the integrity. I know this. Don't worry. I understand this. It's okay.
But to have it on a platform like that, that's it's huge, I think.
I think it was yourself, so you mentioned they're kind of like, ultimately you have to sell this product. You know, how are you feeling right now? We're coming through an environment that's changing, you know, week by week. We look at kind of what's happening to the traditional cinematic distribution route. I know, April, you've mentioned there Amazon Prime. You know, what way does that kind of now? Because I was reading this finished at about March, and I'm assuming that includes post and things like that. You didn't finish filming in March. That would just be too ironic when you watch this film, because you look at Sam and Rose, they are the self-distancing, social distancing king and queens. I think there's definitely an irony watching it there. But for you guys, what's your kind of thoughts on the future right now with this film? Like, where do we go with Rose: A Love Story beyond London Film Festival? What have you that planned out? Do you kind of know? Is there things that you just can't tell me right now? But what way is that market, from your perspective, changing in this? I hate to bring up COVID, but the kind of COVID world that we're currently living in.
It's just a big elephant in the room, isn't it? It's like, the positive side of you goes, well, people will always still want experiences. And I think cinema has become really exciting in that, you know, there's different ways to experience film now. There's interactive cinema, there's cinemas that make it more of an experience. So hopefully, even if that slither of cinema survives, you know, there'll be something, because people do crave like human interaction or like leaving their front door. But the VOD platforms are so powerful, and it does make your film be able to be viewed worldwide. So it's the landscape of film is ever evolving, and I think our hope is just to get it seen by as many people as possible. But and you know, ride off the back of this festival to get it out there. And luckily, we've had quite a few people reaching out and excited by the film, and that's what really matters to us.
Yeah, we're in a really good place. Like we're just holding out for the moment. I think what you've got now is sales agent and distributors really in need of that new content, but potentially not having a huge amount of money that they might have had to buy it. I think we're taking it steady. So we've actually been very surprised about the amount of people having interest in this. And I think what will be key is not to rush it for a Halloween release, but potentially maybe build around an anti-Valentine's Day release. No, but we're very fortunate as one of the very few production companies that has a completed product out of COVID. Not even
COVID, but ready in time. Yeah. Pandemic.
I think everybody's just lost track. Look, I know we are pushed for time, but there is 2 questions I wanted to ask, and particularly wanted to ask you, April, because I want to talk about kind of the fact that the film's getting its world premiere at the London Film Festival. You mentioned just as we started to record, you have a personal connection with the London Film Festival. You have a history with the festival. So kind of to be getting the platform and the film's world premiere here, what does that mean for you? And what does that mean from Mini Productions' point of view to have that platform as a showcase for the film?
Yeah, so I can't cry. It's the BFI. You enter this industry, and all you know is the BFI. That's the pinnacle of British cinema, and similar to what Sara was just saying, we really went and freelanced at as many places as possible, and that should include somewhere like the BFI, which is a distributor and has this incredible festival. So I started off, I did 2 years as part of their social media team, which is so fascinating, and which is why I'm so interested in the way that whether it's a short film or a feature film, or when we do branded content, how you formulate that social media plan. And then I did another 2 years producing their red carpet and interviews, which again is fascinating because you see how hard the press team pull everything together and schedule it. They've been an incredible support. Last year I was part of the BFI Flair mentorship. They've screened a couple of our films in Flair, and it's been a really wonderful journey, and one that we hope we can continue with them.
Yourself, Sarah?
Just over the moon, really. It's like one of those things where you follow all the films that come out every year. You try and watch any film you can. You hear about it when they get reviews. You then go to the cinema. It's just like, it really makes the hard work and fear of people dying in snow off the side of a mountain worth it.
That is true. My last question, because I know we are in a junket and you have other interviews to do beyond this. I also program a film festival, a horror film festival, the Dark Hedges here in Belfast. And one of the things I'm interested in is women making horror. And that idea, is that something that you came into this project and in your own company? Was that something that was conscious to yourself? And kind of, we always hear that, I think the figure might be about 80% of first-time female filmmakers, they don't get the opportunity to make a second feature. Was that something that was in your head when you, not only this feature, but your own shorts, as creating, a benchmark for filmmakers to jump onto, to be able to showcase their work?
We've always been excited by what short films can do leading into features and testing out ideas, but also giving opportunity to filmmakers, and particularly female filmmakers. For us, making a female-led horror with women right at the helm is just such an exciting prospect. And I think it gives women a chance to give the female protagonists and characters in their films real depth and complex characters, rather than always being this victim, that has been previously in traditional horror films. So it's just, really exciting for us to make horror. We love it. It's highly creative. Stunts, blood, scares, script, all of it's just a lot of fun.
You are preaching to the converted, Sarah.
Love
you
it.
definitely know that here. But another thing I do want to mention, you also have a female DOP, and I think the cinematography in this is absolutely outstanding. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I have to say, but just kind of, I know I jumped in there, April, before
She nailed it, Martina.
Yeah.
She was fantastic.
We've worked with her a few times. Very talented. All I was going to add is that I can't find a good enough way to articulate this at the moment, but we always prioritize making sure we're actively looking for diversity, whether that's gender, sexuality, disability. But at the same time, it also doesn't come into our mind because we just do it. So it's very strange. And I think because of how Sara and I started, and because of the landscape of where we started and now living through the Me Too movement, it starts with us, as producers. It starts with us choosing the right story straight off the bat, before we even get people attached to it. It's making sure we're choosing a story which hasn't been told before, underrepresented voices. Are we going to be able to teach someone a different perspective with this? And then it trickles down from there.
Fantastic. Look, I would love to be able to talk to you a lot longer than this, but as I say, I know that this is a junket here at the London Film Festival, so I shall have to leave it here. So thank you very much, April. Thank you very much, Sarah. And good luck with Rose, a Love Story.
Good luck with your festival as well, Jim. Keep going. It's great.
I'm going to need it, but say no more about that. But thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
I take this opportunity to say what an honour it is to host the first Tour de France outside mainland Europe.
Dom is going to be riding in the Tour de France on Saturday.
You gonna win?
No, I'm a support rider. I use my energy for the lead rider to win.
Don't you ever want to win yourself?
Of course. but that's a dream.
I hear this is your last tour. Tough shit.
I need to know about next year. My contract.
You're nearly 39 years old. What do you want me to say? The team needs your focus, nothing to distract you.
What's the worst that can happen?
If you don't take it, you won't win.
Now give me.
Why risk your life like that?
Everyone does it.
You're not even allowed win. You're a loser. Professional loser.
So that's a clip of The Racer, and I'm joined now by one of the film's stars, Tara Lee. Tara, tell us about The Racer. Tell our viewers and our listeners as much as they need to know going in to watch the film.
So it's when the Tour de France was held in Ireland in '98, and it follows a domestique, which is something that I didn't know was a thing, but it's a rider who's basically there to help the rest of the team and to help a lead rider win. And it's kind of in the midst of the whole doping scandals. There's some like a little love story in there. And yeah, it's kind of a character study, I think, on Louis Talbot's character. And I play Lynn, a medical graduate who's on work placement in the Tour de France. And she's kind of almost naive to what these people put their bodies through. And obviously coming at it from a doctor's perspective, she's like, why would you do this? So it's an interesting kind of like cross paths little moment.
Yeah, I have to say you've preempted my next question when I was going to ask you about your character and the role they play within the narrative. So you've touched on that, but I've watched the film now twice since we were sent the screener for. I really enjoyed it. Granted, watching some of the cycling, I do feel physically exhausted. It's like I have friends that are cyclists and are big into their cycling. I don't know if that's your thing or not.
I never really. I always found it interesting to watch it if it was on, but I didn't know anything about it. I took one spin class in my life. Never again. And you say it's exhausting watching it, but being like all of us were in Luxembourg for the shoot, and we finished shooting at 5-6 o'clock, and Louis would go on this massive cycle every single night. Like he had to stop eating at like 3 o'clock or something, and I'm there like I'm gonna go up.
He's not normal. That's
It's his body. It's amazing. Yeah. Like he did something that I would love to do at some point in my career, but oh my God, it was such hard work for him. And so I really commend him for that. But yeah, I think that's what I had in, one of the things that I had in common with my character was that neither of us really knew anything about it. We just kind of found ourselves in a position where we were surrounded by this world.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing, because we look at it, it's a film, it's set in 98, so it's a year before the Lance Armstrong stuff kind of started, and we look back at that now, and I suppose that film's a nice little piece of putting that into context, that it didn't all start with Lance, it was there before, and it is rife in this, there's this kind of blasé-ness about what's going on, men just sitting in rooms, just kind of, this is completely normal. But the one thing you've mentioned about your character, what I did find about it was it's a very masculine heavy feature, and you are the one kind of the one person of femininity is the best way of kind of talking about. You're the feminine character in this, but you hold your own. You get to kind of, I don't want to go into spoilers, but you get to get to throw a few punches. That's not that's what I like about you. I mean, was that something that drew you in for that character? The fact that was that how she was written? Was that kind of from you? The fact that she holds her own while she's coming in at this maybe slightly naive at times. Yeah. She's never overawed by it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good kind of observation that you've made, because it was, obviously from reading the script, I could see, okay, I'm the only woman in this. And then, you're going to be the only woman on set apart from some amazing members of crew. So what you're seeing in the film was the experience shooting it. And, it doesn't faze me, if anything, when it's kind of a male dominant workspace, it makes me want to work even harder to kind of mark my territory and prove that I'm capable just as much as they are. But I was also lucky because it was an amazing cast, and Louis and Ian Glenn particularly taught me some amazing stuff. They were so supportive because I was so much younger, and they're so established, and
They were really supportive. But that scene that you're talking about, that was written by Kieran, and I read that in the first draft, or the first draft that I got when I was auditioning, and I was like, oh my god, I have to get this part. This is so cool. When do you see a scene where she gets to throw the first punch? And on the day there was questions about maybe changing it up a little bit, and me and Kieran were like, no, she's throwing that first punch. She's starting it and she is ending it. Don't think I got to end it in the end, but I got to start it.
It's definitely not a draw, and I don't want to talk too much about it because people watching this and listening to this won't have seen the film yet. But yeah, you definitely hold your own. You've touched on it there. What are your memories of the shoot for the film?
Gosh, I mean, the shoot. I remember a lot of back and forth to Luxembourg. I remember exploring Luxembourg, and actually, one of the first things that pops up in my mind was the most traumatizing day was the day that we did the blood, the test tubes and all. Oh my god, I mean, I have a fear of needles.
We can be friends. I don't like, I mean, I was watching this both times I watched this, and I am like a big Nancy whenever I'm kind of watching like nope.
This made it worse for me because I always felt like, when you're watching that on TV or on a film and it's like, oh, it looks so real. It also feels real when you're doing it. Like, it's not like you're doing it and you can see the trickery in it. As far as I was concerned, I was doing it. And I had to be, the worst thing is that there was a doctor to teach me how to do it as if I was doing it for real. So I know too much. I know too much about what can go wrong when you do something like that. And now every time I have to go in and get a blood test, I'm like, no. Because you can see it like spurting out if the cotton wool doesn't go on.
No.
So that was a really, really traumatic day. And actually, one of the best memories was we all went to a Nick Cave concert one night.
Pretty cool.
So, it wasn't on the set, but it was a good ending to the day. But I mean, also shooting up in the Wicklow Mountains, which is actually up the road from where I am at the moment, that was beautiful. So there's a lot of really good memories, a lot of terrifying memories. But it was a great shoot. It felt like I was learning and testing myself.
I'm tempted to ask you, and I know this is just me from listening to you, you said you were exploring Luxembourg. So what did you find while you were exploring Luxembourg?
So there's this little old town that's like, have you been to Luxembourg?
No, it's somewhere, it's one of those places, it's on that scheme of, well, kind of especially now in the current COVID world that we live in, of you're going to say, right, when this is all done and dusted, I am going to go back. Because I used to travel when I was younger, and then I get old, and then it'll happen to us all. It happens to us all. You eventually get old and you become a homeboy. Well, I become a homeboy, and you're just like, I'm just going to stay at home and I can watch stuff on TV. But I think from the year that's been, it's like, right, I am going to get out and travel. So sell me Luxembourg. Just because you've mentioned you explored Luxembourg, sell me Luxembourg.
I will tell you my favorite things about Luxembourg. So there is this shopping street full of the most amazing shops. So you can like walk down there, do a little bit of shopping. There's like loads of little patisseries selling amazing cakes and coffee. So you like get your lunch there, and then you go back to, there's this kind of like massive cliff mountain area at the very end of the town, and you take in the view, because the view's the fucking best. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on
That's right. You've done it now. It's okay.
Maybe you can give me one of those cool little like beep blur things over my mouth.
I'm not that good at editing. You're just going to have to accept that you've cursed.
It's done
So
now.
it's going to be.
Then you go down these like stairs, and then you're in this old town where it feels so like enriched in history. And I mean, you could spend an entire day down there, but it's just beautiful. There's like a little botanical garden, loads of like really nice little restaurants, a really nice little pub. It's just beautiful. I mean, you could do it in a day, but a long weekend I think would really be the best. Okay. There's also a place we went somewhere for burgers the day that we saw Nick Cave, and I think it was a strip club. I'm not sure. It was very kind of like all kept to one area.
Okay.
With great burgers.
That sounds like a good night. Strip club, burgers, Nick Cave. That sounds like a pre-COVID night out. Now it's just Netflix and sitting at home watching TV. I feel we are a movie review blog, so kind of let's get back to talking about movies of sorts. We're not a travel program. We might kind of retrain and kind of venture out into that, depending on the world that's been. But you were talking about Luxembourg. You've worked in Belfast, I think, with the Fall Series 2, I think you're in. I mean, your memories of working on that?
Oh, that was amazing, because that was kind of, I think I did a self-tape when I was 19, and then drove up to Belfast to meet Alan Cubitt, and I thought that it was going to be, a couple of scenes or whatever, and then I was in every episode, and then they brought me back for a bit of season 3, and it was just the best. Like, the crew on that are just so competent and creative, and I love Belfast. Belfast is one of my favorite places. Each time I think I stayed in the Europa, which is like just so in the center of everything. And I feel like at the time, anyway, I don't know if it's changed, but it felt like there was this wave of like the next generation opening these amazing businesses, like loads of kind of little independent coffee shops, loads of really nice shops and pubs and bars. So it felt like a really kind of buzzing, vibrant place.
It is. It just, it is. It's just kind of in a bit of a lull right now with everything that has been. But yeah, Belfast is good. I am tempted to throw in the obligatory joke that at one point when you were staying in Europa, how many people did tell you that it was the most bombed hotel in Europe?
Every single person. There wasn't one person I passed who didn't say, It's one of the facts that we love to tell. We love to tell you those things. But you were talking about, you were talking about things being vibrant. Generally, your thoughts as a performer, in the arts in Ireland, how have you seen the Irish filmmaking scene change and evolve and grow with such confidence? Like, you're involved in one of my favorite films, a film that was introduced to me by Ethan Barr from Empire Films. He really championed A Date for Mad Mary to me. Finally got round to watching it, and I absolutely loved it. And it's one of those films, and this feels like a lifetime ago now. I remember at the Dublin Film Festival earlier this year, talking to filmmakers about stuff like Rialto and things like that, about this new wave of talent, both off screen and in front of screen, that's coming through. And you're definitely part of that new talent that's coming through. So what's it feel like? You talked there about new wave. What's it feel like to be a part of that new wave of an Irish filmmaking scene? Like there's so much going on, and I know that at the moment there's not a whole lot going on anywhere, but I'm still, there's still stuff that's getting ready to go as soon as they get the go ahead. There's so much stuff in pre-production. There's so many things that have been halted, but I feel like Ireland has really created a name for itself for having these really kind of naturalistic raw emotion. And I think that's the difference. A lot of these kind of like big Hollywood films or stuff that comes from, America is often very big and bold. And I think what we do is we bring it down to what really matters, which is people. And it's like, Lenny Abramson with Normal People. It was so low key and just like two people talking in a room. And actually that draws you in. You feel like you need to sit forward. It's not like a sit back and text on your phone and you'll still know what's going on. Like, you've got to pay attention. And I think that's kind of something that Ireland has kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's really our thing now. And there's so much new talent. Like, I feel like every day I'm hearing about new actors and they're all so good. Like, I feel like they just know what they're doing. Like, and yeah, I feel like there's more stuff than ever being made in Ireland. It went through a period, actually, because I live in London, but I know when I was living here when I was like 19, 20, it didn't feel like there was as many things happening. The quality was always fantastic, but now it feels like there's so much going on and there's so many new casting directors doing amazing work, and it's a really exciting time. I think, like, I feel like there's an endless array of things to watch from Ireland all the time.
It's a really exciting time. We're just kind of covering it, but it's exciting to kind of see what's coming out and the new stories, new time of universal stories that are being told that aren't just wild mountain time. Let's not kind of talk too much about that. You've worked with Jamie. He's one of our own. He's one of our own. I don't know if the man's ever heard an Irish accent in his life. I don't know Bigora. Bigora, but it's just when you say stuff like that about the interesting stories and interesting filmmaking, interesting stories that filmmakers are telling here, and then you mentioned about kind of stuff that's been told out that's coming in and representing Ireland. I think those comparisons, they feel like night and day right now.
The irony of Wild Mountain Thyme. I watched the trailer about 10 times last night.
I think everybody has, yeah.
it's just, I mean, the one good thing that's come out of it is all these amazing like TikToks and like takeoff videos that people are doing. It's so brilliant. But there's just something like you have to laugh or you'll cry, because there's something about this American idea of what it is to be Irish. Like I actually thought that this was set like 50, 60, 70 years ago, like 100 ago. And then there's a shot like of them in America. And it's like, oh no, this is now. You think this is like just outside Mullingar. So I feel like we kind of have had to like take responsibility and show people actually this is who we are and these are the stories that we have to tell, and we don't talk like that. I don't know anyone who talks like that. So I mean, because that's actually something that I get asked a lot, like when I'm doing Q&As in London and Canada or whatever. It's never really in Ireland, but people are always like, why don't you talk like you're Irish?
Oh, you've got my next question done, or you've already nailed my next question. No, but I'm literally I'm joking. I'm joking. Go on ahead. Go on ahead. I am joking.
Yeah, there's this kind of like idea that we talk like, well, one, that we all talk the same. Like there's about 50 different accents in Ireland, and none of them are similar to the next one. But it's also like, what do you think that we talk like the leprechaun in The Simpsons? Like it just baffles my mind, and I always get really like, I try to kind of laugh it off or whatever, but I do get offended because I'm like, I am Irish. I grew up in Wicklow, went to school in Dublin. Of course, like, you know, we all travel, we all get out, and we watch a lot of television and film. So of course our accents are going to change over the years, but I feel like that's one thing that is important from these kind of like homegrown films and TV shows, is just to show like, this is how we talk. Just get that one bit right. Yeah, and people do it well. Like Daisy Edgar-Jones did a phenomenal job at the accent. So there is no excuse. You can do it really, really well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you know, accents are everything. I mean, even up here in Northern Ireland, you could travel 7 miles and accents and stuff can change completely. Yeah. We'll not even talk about Ballymena accents, but that's for another discussion, another time. But, you know, I know you are doing a junket, so I mean, your time is precious, and thank you so much for talking about Luxembourg and accents and Wild Mountain Time and things like that. We are talking about the racer as well. We have talked about that. That's the important thing. But generally, you've mentioned that. I mean, you're back in Ireland at the minute. Is that due to the COVID pandemic, or?
It's kind of a combination. I'm actually shooting Brendan Muldowney's new horror film next week, so I had to kind of isolate for a couple of weeks here. So that'll be exciting. And I'm releasing a Christmas single, so I wanted to kind of isolate for a couple of weeks so I could, like, you know, obviously all COVID secured, go and shoot a music video. So yeah, there was it was my birthday, so it was really nice to kind of like, it was like 2 birds, 1 stone, like get to see my family for my birthday and shoot this movie and a music video. So yeah, I'll probably be here for another few weeks, and then sadly go back to London until Christmas, when I'll be back again.
Yeah. Now, you know, just on that, you know, have you been on set during the current pandemic? I mean, what is that like, or is this your first time venturing on set? I also should note that we run a horror festival, so the fact that you're shooting a horror here in Ireland, has it ultimately, I've got kind of earphones on right now, but that has tweaked my interest with another Irish horror, because they've been doing the Irish filmmakers have been pretty much taking over the horror genre of late. You know, your
what do you think of The Hole in the Ground?
I thought it was great. Really loved it. I love the fact that it was something that was authentically, just going back to what we mentioned, authentically Irish, and had its kind of feet firmly in kind of Irish folklore and all that kind of stuff, like the ideas of the changeling and things like that. And I just thought it was great.
I think Shauna Kerslake is like made to do those kind of badass roles. Like, you just don't want to fuck with her. She's so cool. So I thought she was great in it. Yeah, we have. I feel there's a lot of stuff because I think we've got this thing of like, we've got this rich history of folklore and these really kind of spooky little tales. So there is a lot of stories that you could tell in Ireland, and I think maybe that's why. But I mean, I love Brendan Muldowney. I loved Pilgrimage, and this is a terrifying script. It will absolutely ruin every night's sleep that you're going to have for the next year. Even in the mornings, I'm scared. I'm still, I don't really trust, I don't really trust where I am right now. But no, it's going to be great. And I did a short film a few weeks ago, but apart from that, it will be my first time back on set.
Do you think, I mean, I know you're kind of saying you're home and you're isolating. Are you nervous about that? Are you apprehensive? Or do you think it's a thing that maybe now you're overthinking, and then once you get out on set and you're out working, working on set, it's a long day, start, stop, that eventually it'll just be a case of you'll kind of just, it'll just be motor, like memory muscle, you'll just click into gear and just forget all about it.
Memory, because I really don't like this. I don't like the comfortability of this year of isolation. I don't like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being home and I love being in my apartment in London, and I love, like, I feel like I'm 90% antisocial, 10% social, so it's not that I'm that bothered about not getting out and seeing people, but it's the fact that you don't have something that makes you nervous. Like, you're not going to an audition and getting nervous, you're not meeting someone for the first time and having to make a conversation. You're not getting on public transport and having to be aware. I feel like it's also trained us out of being in clothing, like actual jeans instead of tracksuits, and it has kind of undone a lot of the training that has made us human beings. But I do think that it will be as simple as, I'm back now and I know how this goes. And there's always a fear, even when you're not isolating beforehand, even when everything's normal, I'm always afraid going onto a set, even down to like, oh wait, what's the order? Is it like rolling and then action, or do they say action and then I'm going to act at the wrong time? It's down to the most like minute details that I overthink things. So I don't think that will ever go away, but I also think that energy is kind of what makes a performance come out of you like energized. So yeah, I'm nervous, but I'm also so excited to get back into it.
Well, look, I think I have taken up enough of your time. Thank you so much for this chat. I mean, you've definitely sold me on Luxembourg, and now I have another Irish horror film to look forward to, hopefully in 2021. So maybe we'll get a chat to talk about then, and maybe by then, by the time we get talking again, you might finally be sleeping again. You might be able to sleep, and
maybe we'll see. Even a couple of hours will do.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, Tara Lee, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
So that brings this bumper edition of We Need to Talk About Movies to a close. Hopefully you enjoyed this retrospective episode as we look back on some of the highlights from the past 12 months. We'll be back with new episodes of our podcast in 2021. And if you need to go back, you can find our complete back catalogue on the website at www.banterflix.com. And in early January, our TV show on NVTV should be kicking off again as we continue to probe the cinematic psyche of some of our local filmmaking talent here in Northern Ireland, so you'll not be missing this that much. But anyway, that's enough of me rambling. I've been your host, Jim McLean, the Editor-in-Chief of the Banterflix Movie Review website. This has been another episode of We Need to Talk About Movies, and we will see you in 2021.
This has been We Need to Talk About Movies. Thanks for listening. For more information, visit banterflix.com. See you next time.